Today we have a really exciting presentation from Diane Cote from the Manti-LaSal National Forest. I had the pleasure of meeting Diane last month at a Forestry Stewardship Council meeting, and I knew immediately that she would be perfect for this format. Diane brings over 30 years of forestry expertise to her position as the forest silviculturist with the Manti-LaSal National Forest. She has experience throughout the West, and her positions have ranged from working as a forester and then as a silviculturist in the temperate forest of Washington in the Cote National Forest in the 80s, to holding the position as a district silviculturist in the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest in Oregon in the 90s. Utah was lucky enough to snatch her up in the mid-90s, where she's been working tirelessly as a forest silviculturist in the San Pete Ranger District. Today she's here to tell us a success story that involves multiple Utah partners working together for a common goal, restoration and utilization. So again, if you have any questions or problems with tech support, please chat with me. Otherwise, I will let Diane present her talk. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in. I hope you'll enjoy this. This picture I'm showing you here is pretty typical of the landscape we were addressing in Miller's Flat. If you look in the background, you see some dead spruce. There are similar ponds to these all throughout the area, and it's much, the aspen is a major feature in the area as well, and it is relatively flat. Oh, why isn't it now? Okay. There we go. The project objective.
So, hey, Diane, I might ask that you move your microphone a little closer to your mouth,
okay,
just a little bit. Thanks.
All right. The project objectives. Well, that evolved. We started out as a timber project that became a fuels project, and then the more we walked around out there, it became a watershed project, a roads project, and then recreation. And the project objectives took many hours by the ID team to craft because it was very complicated. So we went from a Healthy Forest Restoration Act, NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act document, to just a general EA to address all our issues. Primarily, we were going to reduce the fire regime condition class from moderate to low, because we are adjacent to private land in holdings with summer homes and a ranch, and I'll show you a picture of that later. There's also an above gas pipeline going through the area. The range in TBR, or timber units, is how we manage our vegetation. Range is similar to the timber, where we would extract product, but leaving it in a condition that is more conducive to domestic ungulates like cows and sheep, that's emphasized. We also, because of our forest plan to regenerate aspen where it occurred and replace the Engelmann spruce where aspen doesn't occur. We also had a problem in that we acquired a state section of land, and it had roads in it, but as far as our forest was concerned, the roads didn't exist. So we had to identify a road system in that area and then add it to our system. We also had rampant motorized use, lots of dispersed camping, 16 miles of user-created routes. We had huge areas where, a dozen or more large motorhomes would congregate. So we had some issues with human waste and too much activity adjacent to the wetlands. We had a little piece of land, that state section wasn't designated under our forest plan, so we had to designate it. And then we also wanted to fix the mapping, where we had done some erosion control measures back in the 60s. Our ID team, without which this project wouldn't have been successful. Bill Broadbear, Recreation, myself as ID team, Catherine Foster was the hydrologist at the time, Jeff Jukes was a wildlife biologist, Dan Luke, the engineer, Matt Macarillo, Range, Darren Reynolds, Fuels, Mike Scotchern, my assistant as a Forster and Charmaine Thompson, archaeologist. Darren Olson was the ranger who signed the decision and supported us at last. Proposed action. There was approximately 480 acres of proposed harvest activities, 145 acres of helicopter, and the rest would be ground-based systems. We were going to regenerate approximately 305 acres from either aspen, and the rest would be spruce planting where we couldn't get aspen to come back. We also had 177 acres of dead aspen and hazardous conifers to remove around wreck sites. The following harvest, we have 480 acres that may be burned, masticated, hand-piled, and thinned. And there was about 12 acres of conifers that will be removed from aspen stands. This is the ranch that's adjacent on the north side of the project area. And you can see there's houses a little. And I wasn't able to get a picture of the subdivision that's nearby because it's in a closed area that I don't have access to. This is the project. Now, wildland and urban interface, as we define it, is anything within 1.5 miles of structures inhabited by humans. And so here's where the ranch is, where my cursor. The ranch that I showed you is right here, and further north of the subdivision. The vegetation. This peak area is a recreation area, so we tried not to go extreme silviculture here. We were trying to retain forested setting for the recreation site. The magenta areas were areas we were focusing on forestry, where we were doing patch clear cuts to enhance aspen and address the dead spruce. This area up in the canyon is pretty much spruce fir, maybe a little aspen down on the flat, and so our emphasis there was to regenerate spruce. Oh, I'm not doing too good with the buttons here. This is a typical stand of dead spruce surrounding the wreck site. And as you can see, this road that accessed it was extremely muddy, and what you can't see is this is a braided wetland there where it was about 30 feet wide, and it just kept getting wider and wider whenever the mud hole was difficult to get through. Our proposed action for transportation was to use approximately 2.5 miles of temp roads and then obliterate those. A lot of times we're using areas that have already got a skid road or a user-created road, and then we can get rid of that when we're done. Some of the temp road was on an existing trail system, which will go back to trail when we're done. There were 16 miles of roads and routes that were proposed to obliterate. There was 1.7 miles of classified roads and 13 miles of user-created routes. That's a big issue in this area. There was approximately 2 miles of classified roads that would be converted to non-motorized trail, and then 2 miles of unauthorized routes that would be added to the road system and access dispersed sites. And some of this was in the old state section. There was a little bit of new construction to avoid wetlands. So this is our transportation problem. So you can see it was a rutted mess out there. And wreck sites would get bigger and bigger and bigger. This is our road system. I realize the maps don't mean much, but it just gives you an idea of some of the scope of the project. For recreation, we wanted to close some of the 5 sites because they were right in wetlands, and we couldn't make the site big enough to avoid them. We were going to modify 7 sites so they had improved access, fire rings, site containment. 9 sites are planned for natural but with site containment, and we call that log and block fences here. There were 27 sites that were going to have no improvements. We're going to install 3 vault toilets next to heavily used areas, and then 1,200 feet of log and block fence for site containment and site closures. They were going to construct the non-motorized trailhead facilities near Sealy Canyon and construct 3.3 miles of road for that trailhead. And there'll be 4 hardened spurs between forest roads and the campsites. So that is the trailhead as it existed in 2009. And you can see how lovely and wide the road was and how muddy. And so this is our wreck sites that were scattered throughout the area. For the watershed, we wanted to protect and restore approximately 35 acres of wetlands by removing user-created routes at firm wetlands and relocating and eliminating dispersed wreck sites. And we also had mud bogging in our wetlands. And the person who did that was caught and fined, and a lot of the restoration for that wetland was paid for by that fine. So here's a before and after picture of that same stand I initially showed you. As you can note, all the dead spruce. This is what the stand looks like with the removal of the dead spruce and some of the subalpine fir from the aspen patches. And there's aspen all through here. This is one of the access routes in the state land that was quite a mess. And you can see that here's something they used to go around a mud hole at some point. And this is the area now. See, if you note, the trees are the same. And that extra access route is totally healed. So these were, the initial pictures were 2009, and I just took these other pictures this year. Here again is that trailhead and the mud, and this is what it looks like today. And note the log and block fences to keep them on the roadway. Watershed. This is what that pond looks like today. Most of the tire ruts are healed. This is an almost finished harvest unit. Unfortunately, I don't have a pre-picture, but we've logged it. The logging flash was lopped and scattered, and we've since pre-commercial thinned it. This is adjacent to a recreation site, and the next evolution here will be a little bit of jackpot burning to get rid of some of the finer material. We expect some of the larger material to be used by woodcutters. This is another unit that's been finished as far as the logger is concerned and pre-commercial thin. There were some areas with quite a bit of dead spruce, so they're pretty open at this point. This is one of the wreck sites that has been improved. You know, where it was just a muddy flat. We now have recreation. We just have a nice small toilet, and we use forest health protection dollars to transplant conifers into some of the areas for shade. We don't have a lot of luck with potted trees. They get run over by four-wheelers, so we went to tree transplanting. We own our own tree transplanter, and we just rent a bobcat every year to do the transplant. And these trees come from the surrounding forest. This is an example of the recreation site improvements. You can note the fire ring, and right in the foreground is actually a wetland, and there's the log and block fence that's controlling access. Our rec forester likes to call it confine, control, contain, the 3 C's. And he and I have worked on a number of projects on the forest that have done similar things. What we did for timber and fuels, which was our original objective, was we sold 5,200 CCF. We will probably have about 1,000 additional CCF from down material, which we are allowing them to take by agreement. There's way more down-woody material than is needed to provide for site productivity in the dock. We have a 2,600 CCF of optional volume that could be removed by helicopter. We don't know yet if they will actually remove that. So we'll have 450 acres of timber stand improvement, 450 acres of planting or natural with site prep, and 450 acres of fuel treatment when it's all said and done. There's the questions. I'll come back to this, but I do have some additional photos to show you of the results. Wait a minute. Megan, this is not my last one. There should have been some more photos. But at this point, if we don't have those, we can open it up for questions.
Well, Diane, while I'm looking for the extra questions, perhaps you can answer this one. Clearly, the off-road vehicle users were sort of having a heyday up there. What were their initial reactions to the road closures, and how did you deal with any potential conflict?
Well, primarily we work through the county because ATVs provided a lot of income for this poor county of Emory County, and strangely enough, we don't get a lot of comments on our projects. There's been a lot of resistance, but they put in, there's a major trail in there. We have like hundreds of miles of trails on this forest. And so what's left out there is good trail versus the mess we had before. They did the trail, the ATV trail as a separate NEPA document because the ranger at the time didn't want one. And so subsequently, they added it as a separate project. One of the things that I need to bring up about this project, it was totally supported by the specialists I dealt with, and essentially we had to fight for 5 years to get the project through. Management resisted us violently. They felt that we should split the project into 4 separate things. They wanted to drop the project. I don't know what the issue was, but the ID team was lockstep, elbows together, fighting for this for 5 years. And when we finally got it through, by that time we had a ranger and a forest supervisor that was really excited about the project. And what's interesting is now we would have no resistance to a project at this time. I see there's a question about stewardship. No, we sold it. No, we aren't paying the log. And our spruce is valuable enough that we can at least sell it at base rates or a little bit over. And with them taking the material off the ground by agreement for $1 CCF, we're saving fuels dollars by not having to treat that post-harvest.
Well, Diane, I just checked the last PowerPoint that you sent me, and there weren't any extras in there, so maybe you have it. But Darren has a question.
A gentleman called Alan Fiedler, he's a new purchaser. He's kind of a proactive type. He sells the house log material to Satterwhite, and then he keeps some of it for himself. He uses fuel wood. He's found a market for the green. He chips a lot of it for the turkey plants. I guess, and he sells it for firewood. He just kind of finds a way to get rid of the material. Not too happy with the green, but it's part of the contract. Any other questions?
Well, if there aren't any other questions, maybe we'll give one more minute for anyone that has any burning questions to come up.
While that's going on, Megan had mentioned lessons learned. I'm going to tell you, huge upfront investment in the NIFMA process, National Forest Management Act. Doing all the groundwork, getting your act together with your specialists, the design features made everything simple for us internally on the NEPA. We were all in accord. So that made life easier. What's the hee-ha component? We did have some resistance from Grand Canyon Trust and Utah Environmental Congress. They proposed a separate alternative. It was difficult to analyze because it didn't meet the purpose and need, and it wasn't based on science. In the end, they did not appeal the project, and I don't know why, because they were not happy with logging. Uh, 2009
So from start to finish,
was when I took those pictures. We probably started in 2007 or 8 thinking about it, and getting the NEPA done, 5 years. And it got dropped a lot of time, postponed, unfunded. There wasn't a lot of money for this except from timber money and fuels. Recreation contributed their salary. The engineers contributed their salary. I just can't say enough of how good the ID team was for me as an ID team leader and the support I had from them. They really fought a good fight with me. Oh, helicopter. There's a steeper piece in the back. It's over 40% slope, and it's really thick Engelmann spruce, probably 80 to 100 tons of standing dead trees. Quite an understory component. If they don't choose to take it, we'll not be able to thin it or reforest it. But the purchaser is considering it, and we have another helicopter unit about 10 miles away in another sale, and that purchaser is trying to negotiate with Alan to log it and take the material. It's Saturday White House log. It's beautiful stuff. But that's the last helicopter we'll be doing. We've gone to excavators on our steeper ground.
All right, well, there aren't any further questions. I would like to extend a big thank you to Diane for taking time out of her schedule to put together this project, this presentation of her project. Obviously, she has her email up. Diane has retirement in her near future, so I highly recommend that if there are more questions that you take advantage of her knowledge while she's still with us. And your concise presentation really offered a great example of multi-agency collaboration and how we can be effective in our positions. So mark your calendar. Next month's Learn at Lunch webinar will take place on November